Wayne Bertram Williams was born May 27, 1958 in Atlanta, Georgia to Homer and Faye Williams. He would become one of America's most infamous serial killers in recent history, racking up a total of a suspected 30 victims from 1979 to 1981, mostly young boys he'd befriended while out driving. Wayne's parents were both school teachers, and as an only child, Wayne would excel in class. His teachers and classmates described him as a virtual genius. His entrepreneurial spirit was exhibited through his attempt to start a radio station in his parents' basement. His work would soon gain him a brief taste of fame after being covered in Jet magazine. In 1976, a now 18-year-old Wayne would graduate from Douglas High School and enroll in Georgia State University. He would only stay for 1 year before dropping out. From then, Wayne would lose direction. By the age of 23, he was going from one thing to another, going from radio work to record production to talent scouting. Wayne would also dabble in freelance photography, and despite his hefty career ambitions, Williams' work never took off. His parents were big investors in Wayne's dreams, and when they all failed, they had to file for bankruptcy. A longtime neighbor of the Williams would later state to the FBI that kids in the neighborhood thought Wayne Williams was a policeman because he spoke and acted like one, even carrying a badge around with him. Many of them thought he started acting crazy 2 to 3 years ago. He would approach kids in official-looking vehicles, telling them to get off the street, or he would lock them up. Many just assumed this was Wayne trying to look out for the kids. However, it had a much more sinister meaning to it. On July 21, 1979, 14-year-old Edward Hope Smith was at a skating rink with his girlfriend before they both parted ways. This would be the last time Edward would be seen alive, as his body would be discovered 2.1 miles away from the Greenbrier rink on July 28th. He had died from a gunshot wound to his upper back from a .22 pistol. He was allegedly last spotted with 13-year-old Alfred Q. James Evans at a pot party before he also went missing. Witnesses claim Alfred was going to watch a karate movie before his disappearance. 75 yards away from where Edward Smith was found, laid the dead body of Alfred Evans, who appeared to have died from asphyxiation. On September 4, 1979, 14-year-old Milton Harvey stayed home from school and borrowed a yellow 10-speed bike from a friend so he could ride 3 miles to a Citizens and Southern bank to pay a credit card bill for his mother. A witness placed Milton at the bank and confirmed he did pay the credit card bill. This was the last time he was seen alive. A week after he went missing, the bike he had borrowed was found beside a pine tree on a remote dirt road. The dirt road was located between Milton's home and the bank. On November 16th, the badly decomposed remains of Milton Harvey were found approximately 12 to 15 miles from his home. Due to the conditions of his remains, the coroner listed his death as undetermined. On October 21, 1979, 9-year-old Yusuf Bell had run an errand for his elderly neighbor, who gave him 17 cents to go purchase some snuff from the nearby corner store. He was last seen getting into a blue car with only cut-off brown shorts on. On November 8th, a 30-year-old janitor named John Henry Ty found Yusuf's body in the crawl space of an abandoned building. He had died from blunt force trauma and asphyxiation. Fibers found on his body would tie his death to multiple other victims during this period. On March 4, 1980, 12-year-old Angel Lanier had completed her homework and headed to her friend's house around 4 p.m. to watch her favorite TV show, Sanford and Son. A witness confirmed she made it to her friend's home and watched TV. This was the last time she was spotted alive, and her mother would report her missing after she failed to return home that evening. On March 10th, Angel's body was found tied to a tree approximately 3 miles from her home. There was an electrical cord around her neck and a pair of white women's underwear in her mouth. The coroner determined her cause of death was asphyxiation by strangulation with an electrical cord. She had also been assaulted, leading police to look into local sex offenders, but no charges were brought. As of now, 5 children have been murdered all the same way by strangulation, except for Edward Hope Smith, who was shot and killed, and Milton Harvey, whose death was listed as undetermined. The now rapid killings would continue with a 6th victim. On March 11, 1980, 10-year-old Jeffrey Lamar Mathis was sent to the nearby store by his mother to purchase cigarettes. Witnesses placed him at the store, and a barber at a local barbershop stated he knocked on his window that day before he went missing. A girl would later state months later that she saw Jeffrey get into a car with two men, one light-skinned and one dark-skinned. A second witness said he saw Jeffrey riding in a blue Nova across the street from a shopping center 2 weeks after he went missing. The witness claimed he was riding in the car with one black man. On March 30th, that witness was held at gunpoint by the driver of that blue Nova. On February 19th, 1981, FBI agents with trained dogs located the remains of Jeffrey Mathis approximately 10 miles from his home in a heavily wooded area. On April 15, 1980, Yusuf Bell's mother, Camille Bell, joins with other mothers of recently missing or murdered children to start an organization called the Committee to Stop Children's Murders. Their goal is to bring media attention to the unsolved crimes. Hopes were high and prayers were made that an arrest would be announced soon, but to no avail. On May 18, 1980, 14-year-old Eric Middlebrooks received a call at 10 p.m. and retrieved a hammer from his home and left on his bike. Not unusual for Eric, as he often ran errands late at night for people. And that night it was believed he used the hammer to fix his bike before running an errand for his neighbor. However, the following day his body would be found a mile from his home in the rear garage of a bar. He had suffered a brutal death with blunt force trauma to his head and multiple stab wounds to his upper left chest and upper right arm. His pockets were turned inside out, and no money was found on him. It should be noteworthy that mere weeks prior to his death, he had testified in a robbery case involving 3 teens. On June 9, 1980, 12-year-old Christopher Philip Richardson was headed to the Midway Recreation Center to swim. He was never seen alive again. On January 9, 1981, his remains were found beside another victim in a wooded area about a mile from where Milton Harvey's body was found in 1979. Police were searching for 14-year-old Luby Geeter, who went missing a week prior. A resident noticed his dog had a foul odor after going into the woods nearby and notified police. As they entered the woods, they discovered the remains of Christopher Richardson and Earl Terrell, who went missing on July 30th, 1980. On June 22, 1980, 7-year-old LaTonya Yovette Wilson was reported kidnapped from her second-story room by an unidentified man, according to a witness. This case was very unusual compared to the other murders so far because of how brazen it was. The witness claimed a man entered her second-story window 4 times before kidnapping LaTonya and exiting the rear door of the apartment she stayed in with her family. The man had to climb over her brother and walk past her parents' bedroom to take her out of the home. On October 18, 1980, her dead body was discovered in a fenced area near the United Youth Conference Center. By now, her remains were skeletal, and the cause of death was undetermined. Although her murder took place during the other Atlanta kids' deaths, police believe her killer was a family member, with her case still open and unsolved to this day. On July 17, 1980, with 8 children found dead and several others still missing, Mayor Maynard Jackson forms a special task force to look into these cases. The task force is composed of several state and local law enforcement agencies, including the Atlanta Police Department and the Georgia Bureau of Investigations. The task force creates the list, a running tally of victims, which proves controversial. The investigation of the Atlanta murders was extremely expensive. The city was losing money, having to pay $150,000 a month for police overtime. President Reagan would eventually grant Atlanta $1 million for protection and mental health programs to help Atlanta cope, but none of the money could be used to find the killer. Mayor Jackson decided to throw a benefit concert to raise money, which was a big success. With iconic music legends like Sammy Davis Jr. and Frank Sinatra performing, there was no problem filling up the Civic Center. People paid $25 to $100 to go to the event. The profits from the shows, along with donations from Atlanta corporations like Coca-Cola, would raise the money to $200,000. Mayor Jackson would only set the reward money amount to $100,000. Shortly before, the iconic boxing legend Muhammad Ali would donate a large sum amount of $400,000. Ali was quoted from multiple news reports stating, That seemingly large amount of money won't even buy a Rolls-Royce. After an arrest was made with no one giving any helpful tips to law enforcement, the $500,000 would mysteriously go missing. With the reward money piling up and the Atlanta child murders gaining nationwide exposure, the murders would once again continue. From June of 1980 to May of 1981, another 21 victims would lose their lives, including these 5 adult males: 21-year-old Eddie Lamar Bubba Duncan Jr., 20-year-old Larry Eugene Rogers, 21-year-old Jimmy Ray Payne, 28-year-old Nathaniel Cater, and 28-year-old John Harold Porter. March of 1981, President Ronald Reagan commits more than $1.5 million in federal assistance for the task force investigation. These murders were occurring during a time when racial tensions were still very much alive and well, and it was believed a white male was responsible for the murders. However, given the large number of victims that seemingly continued to pile up, others assumed the killer had to be someone who could blend into the community and not stand out or be noticed. On April 20th, 1980, the body of 23-year-old Michael McIntosh is discovered on the bank of the Chattahoochee River. Reports vary about when he went missing. April 27th. The body of 21-year-old Jimmy Ray Payne is also discovered in the Chattahoochee River, several miles away from where he was last seen on April 22. The initial medical examiner report calls his death undetermined, and drowning is suspected because he is found in shorts that resemble swim trunks. During the start of May, because of the pattern of victims found in rivers, the FBI sets up a 30-day surveillance of over a dozen bridges to see if they can catch a perpetrator in the act of dumping a body. Hundreds of officers stake out bridges between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. Finally, the day police had waited for would come. On May 22nd, around 2:50 a.m., a police recruit stationed under the James Jackson Parkway Bridge hears a splash. When he radios his fellow officers, they look up and see headlights driving slowly across the bridge. They pull over 23-year-old Wayne Williams, question him, and search his car before letting him go. May 24th, the body of 28-year-old Nathaniel Cater is found floating in the Chattahoochee River, not far from the James Jackson Parkway Bridge. Nathaniel Cater was last seen outside the Rialto Theater on May 21st. In the coming days and weeks, Wayne is brought in for questioning and polygraphed. His home and car are searched, and police collect fibers and dog hair they believe to be tied to some of the victims. In June of 1981, Wayne hires former Atlanta City Solicitor Mary Welcome as his defense attorney and hosts a press conference from his home declaring his innocence. On June 21st, Wayne is arrested for the murders of Nathaniel Cater and Jimmy Ray Payne, both adult victims. The arrest does little to provide comfort for the families of the missing and murdered children. In December of 1981, the trial of Wayne Williams officially begins. Hair and fiber experts from both the FBI and GBI take the stand and claim hair and fibers found on the bodies of the victims are similar to those found in Williams's home and car. The prosecution introduces 10 additional children's cases. The additional cases are Alfred Evans, Eric Middlebrooks, Charles Stevens, Luby Geter, Terry Pugh, Patrick Baltazar, Joseph Jojo Bell, Larry Rogers, John Porter, and William Barrett. Judge Clarence Cooper allows the prosecution to bring these victims in as pattern evidence in support of the 2 murder charges against Wayne. Many witnesses would come forward speaking on behalf of many of the victims, most claiming they witnessed the victims last being with Wayne Williams before they went missing. One of the witnesses was a friend of Wayne's, Sharon Blakely, who testified that he told her he'd confess if enough evidence was mounted against him. She admits on the stand that she thinks he did it. At the end of the trial, Williams takes the stand and testifies on his own behalf. After 3 days of questioning, he loses patience and blows up at the prosecution, stating, "You want the real Wayne Williams? Well, you got him." After just 11 hours of deliberation, the jury finds Williams guilty of murdering Nathaniel Cater and Jimmy Ray Payne. He is sentenced to 2 life terms. Wayne would file a motion for appeal, but to no avail. As of 2025, Wayne Williams is serving his 2 life sentences. He has been denied parole many times, and his next opportunity for parole will be in 2027. He has since done an interview in which he claims his innocence and says there is no evidence tying him to the murders and that he was being framed. The Atlanta child murders are still up for debate for those who studied the cases, and many don't believe Wayne committed all of the murders, though they do believe he was responsible for more than a few. His comments regarding the murdered kids were very telling, as if he blamed them for what happened to them. It was touched upon, but not deeply dug in, regarding Wayne Williams being taught military tactics and how to strangle people. A question he laughed at, but refused to answer. In this clip, a reporter brings up his reported CIA training to which he refuses to speak on.
It's a account of your CIA training.
We're not going to get into that.
Why not?
We're not going to get into that.
I got a copy of it.
Yeah, but we're not going to get into that.
Why not?
You're just simply not going to get into that.
She then brings up the fact he claims he had experience in training with several firearm weapons and learned hand-to-hand techniques to which he once again refused to answer.
You write how you fired rifles, submachine guns, handled assault weapons, grenade launchers, C4, learned unarmed combat techniques through this training group over weekends. Is it true or is it false?
We're not going to comment on it.
When you're 19 years old, you're saying you work for the CIA. You've been recruited.
I'll let the document speak for itself. We're not going to comment on that.
Copyright 1992 by Wayne Williams.
Let me know what you think of this crime case down below.